Up on offer today is the ASUS Prime RTX 5080. The newest generation, 16 gigs. This is obviously the card that you're supposed to buy if you're going to buy into the 5000 series generation, unless you're going for the AI thing. AI could be, because you need, 30 gigs of VRAM. This has 16 gigs of VRAM. The prices are stabilizing, maybe? Are they? American global trade war notwithstanding. I don't know what's going on there, but I did some testing with this card. I had some surprises along the way. It's an interesting card. Let's take a look. So the RTX 5080 from ASUS. The Prime series, really, it's an interesting aesthetic this generation, whether or not you're looking at GeForce RTX or, Team Red with AMD. The aesthetic of the cards is very, very similar. This is a 2.5 slot card. Basically, it's a 3 slot card. It can help you out if you've got a small form factor build that you're doing that has room for 3 slots or 2.5 slots, but the rear I/O cutout is only 2 slots. There's a couple cards that I can't use. Well, in our Era 2, it works fine, but for certain small form factor machines, they've only got 2 slots at the back, even though they have room for a GPU like this. It can be a little problematic using a GPU that has 3. This also has the NVIDIA styled 12V2 connector. So there is some controversy around that power connector because of reports of melting. That is especially with the 5090, which uses up to 600 watts. This card doesn't use 600 watts. 450 watts, sure, with an overclock, but as long as you're using a reasonably recent power supply and as long as you take care to plug it in and make sure that it's evenly distributed across the power connector, that's good. There are some questionable design choices that were made in terms of monitoring the amount of power on each pin. It is problematic in just about every 12V2 GPU that exists now, but those are videos for another day. This is just performance, fit, and finish with the Prime. Now, given this is 2.5 slots, wouldn't the Founders Edition make more sense? It's 2 slots. It's NVIDIA's reference cooling. It's double flow through. Not necessarily, and that's what the Era here is doing. Double flow through is not great when you have your GPU vertically mounted, because what's it going to flow through to exactly? On this side, it's the motherboard. On this side, you can maybe get a little bit of flow through to the power supply, depending on what sort of creative horrors you've done on the other side. But generally, small form factor machines like this, double flow through is not fabulous. The other dimension of not fabulous that I really should mention is PCIe Gen 5. PCIe Gen 5 with a riser or an extension cable can be a source of headaches, crashes, and other problems. So if you are having trouble with your GPU, try and eliminate the riser cable or extension cable. It may be impossible for you to buy a reliable PCIe Gen 5 cable. I've seen several threads on the forum where people bought 2, 3, 4 Gen 5 capable extension cables and not gotten a single one that would actually work reliably. There's a lot more variability in that kind of stuff than you would think. So if you're worried about stability, small form factor might be a little trouble just because of the extension cable and no other reason. Now, can you drop down to PCIe Gen 4? You would think you would be able to drop down to PCIe Gen 4 in the BIOS and settings. That can help, but that's not always a guarantee. That said, I managed to import PCIe Gen 5 cables. PCIe Gen 5 accessories is something that I'm always looking at carrying on the level 1 store. Just logistics, now tariffs and manufacturing, and just the chaos of dealing with that is a little bit more than I'm prepared to handle, but I'm always curious about fun things for off-label uses with PCIe. In terms of the fit and finish of the card, it's got a solid metal backplate. It sort of acts as its own anti-sag support. It does have screw mounting here, so this is also a popular choice, the Prime series for OEMs. Interestingly, the GeForce RTX version of the Prime is a little shorter than our Radeon counterparts. Just a hair, not a lot, just a little bit shorter. The card also has a performance and quiet mode switch, which is great because you never know. Although in performance mode, I found the noise quite acceptable, even in a small form factor case like this, sitting on the desk next to me while I was doing gaming and everything else. Speaking of gaming, let's take a look at those benchmarks. Now, if you've been following the benchmarks closely with the launch of the 5080, you'll know that the 5080 is sort of known in the community as the 4090 Lite. It's a 4090 with 16 gigs of VRAM instead of 24. It's a little slower than the 4090, and we'll see that in AI and other tasks. But generally, the 4090 falls between the 5080 and the 5090 in terms of performance. And the cost is going to be what everything comes down to. When NVIDIA had their big stage event. It was like, oh, $999 for the 5080. You're not going to be able to find the ASUS Prime 5080 for $999. However, as I have been working on this video, the price has fluctuated more than $200 for the 5080 Prime. And so the price is fluctuating. You know, what would be a fantastic price for the RTX 5080? I don't know, because it's not just the graphics card. It's not just a choice that ASUS is making. We have some chaos monkeys running loose. That is a technical term, believe it or not. That is not. It is an agent of chaos in order to test the resilience of your infrastructure. Trust me. And those chaos monkeys are making things interesting in terms of pricing. So you just have to shop around. If you can get a 4090 for $1,000, you should do it. But, you know, if you want a new card with a warranty and all that sort of stuff, you know, 5080 Prime, yes, makes sense. So on, yes. There's trade-offs. There's trade-offs with everything. Who knows? We might be bartering canned beans soon. It's untelling. I don't know. Anyway, rasterization performance before we get to ray tracing in Shadow of the Tomb Raider. And this is with a preset. So this is on our Ryzen 9800X3D, 32 gigs of RAM, tuned to DDR5 6000, Samsung 980, Windows 11. And the Windows 11 does have all the tweaks and patches and fun stuff like that. It is with virtualization-based security on, so you lose a little performance there, but basically we're pretty good. And the 5080 is leading the pack here. That's both 1080p and 1440p. It's a very enjoyable gameplay experience, let me tell you. Now, speaking of gameplay experience, that's one of the things that I ran into with testing this card. The launch day drivers for the 5000 series were pretty solid, but there have been a couple of quick follow-on updates from NVIDIA. And those updates have improved gaming performance significantly over launch in some titles, in some scenarios, depending on what graphical options you have turned on and everything like that. That said, I also ran into some driver stability issues from NVIDIA, and it's not the fault of ASUS or this card. Shadow of the Tomb Raider, for example, which is an ancient game that'll run on a potato-class computer, depending on what ray tracing options you have enabled with the very latest GeForce driver, problem. But if you roll back to an older driver, or you roll back to the launch day drivers for the 5000 series, it's basically okay. There's a lot of suffering out there on the internet right now. NVIDIA is working on driver updates, black screens, that sort of thing. Sometimes the black screens are actually because of cabling issues. Like you can have a DisplayPort cable that works fine on one driver version but not another because of subtle changes in how the DisplayPort physical handshake works. You'd be surprised. This card has 3 DisplayPort connections and 1 HDMI. It's DisplayPort 2.1 plus HDMI 2.1. You could move your monitor from one DisplayPort connection to another, and that may be just enough port-to-port variance to bring everything back in spec if you are experiencing black screen issues on some of these drivers. For my testing here, I'm using our Aorus OLED as well as the ASUS OLED, the butter for your eyes monitor. OLED! OLED really is the promised land future of, oh my gosh, this is an incredible experience for my eyes. I love this. And any technologies that deliver that kind of an experience directly into your retinas, solid A+ in my book. Heck, even 4K is playable on the 5080 with our Ultra preset on Cyberpunk. Although cutting our frame rate in half from 1440p to 4K, ouch. Now let's kick it up a notch with ray tracing. Ray tracing on our Ultra preset, Cyberpunk Phantom Liberty version 2.21. Yeah, 106 FPS. NVIDIA really has improved ray tracing this generation, software and hardware updates. In the 5000 series, it really shows. It really is a different gameplay experience. And even though I'm only getting 85 FPS at 4K, natively, again, on our beautiful butter for our eyes OLED monitors, it's a different gameplay experience than launch day with Cyberpunk, let me tell you. I can hardly believe the video games look that good. If you throw in some mods and a whole bunch of other stuff I don't want to get into, you can do some really incredible stuff with Cyberpunk these days. Monster Hunter Wilds, the benchmark here, I mean, yeah, this card is going to deliver even for the excellent performance bar at 4K. Just barely, but it'll do it. It's basically the difference between 30 and 60 FPS. This is what Monster Hunter Wilds recommends for their own benchmark. If you prefer a high frame rate at 1440p, yeah, this card's going to deliver that. Look at that buttery smooth goodness. Now with Monster Hunter Wilds ray tracing, we are just barely at 60 FPS, just over, just under, depending on what it is that you're doing. And again, this is the excellent result from Monster Hunter Wilds, their own benchmark. And so they say, yes, run with these visual fidelity presets, ultra basically. And if you want to step down slightly from ultra, you will achieve pretty consistent over 60 FPS. That's a buttery smooth gameplay experience. And don't forget, 5000 series also has frame gen, so you can take that already pretty good 60 FPS experience and double it to nearly 120. And if you have a display like this, you'll notice. Those two games will give you an idea of how they stack up among all the other GPUs that we have, but we also tested a few other games as well. Now for artificial benchmarks, Firestrike. Let's take a look at Firestrike. And this kind of bears out what I was saying. 5080 is a little behind the 4090 FE. You can see that here in Firestrike. It doesn't necessarily translate to real world gameplay. And don't forget that the 5080 lets you do 3x and 4x multi-frame generation to 5000 series GPUs. That's the headline feature. Other than that, 4090 versus, 5080, 4090 is pretty awesome for things other than gaming as well. Geekbench scores, well, the 5090 is on top, of course, and then the 4090, and then the 5080. And this is just to give you an idea of how the OpenCL performance stacks up in the range of graphics cards. Port Royal will also give us an idea of performance, and yeah, the 5080 is right behind the 4090. Now, what about AI tasks? You have 16 gigs of memory here, so you could run a 7 or 14 billion parameter models, as long as those parameters are 8-bit, or a 7 billion parameter model where it's like bfloat 16, something like that. And the performance here, again, is pretty good. Our Procyon AI text generation, in terms of tokens per second for the various models here, Mistral 7B, Llama 2, the 5080 really is posting some pretty good performance here. It's well ahead of the 5070 Ti, but it's not nearly as fast as the 4090. As a practical matter, anything more than like 25 or 30 tokens per second is usable, in my opinion, for a single user. So if you want to be able to run a 7 or 14 billion parameter model completely from GPU, you can do that. If you have a lot of system RAM and a relatively powerful CPU, you can also run some layers on the GPU, and you can use your context, your like KV cache, things like that on your GPU, and everything else runs from the system, and you can still achieve 10, 15, 20 tokens per second, just depending on what the balance is between the layers that are running on your GPU and the layers that are running on the rest of the system. I don't think there's a universe where it would make sense to get two 5080s. You should probably get a 5090. And if you want an upgrade over that, the RTX Blackwell, RTX 6000, 96 gigs of VRAM. There's a thread on the forum where everybody's posting their receipts. It's like, yeah, I've got mine, or my pair. Fun times. 3D Mark Time Spy. The 5000 series drivers have improved significantly, and moving fast and breaking things is part of why I think there's been some 5000 series driver instability that has maybe more negatively impacted people that are running older GPUs than the 5000 series from NVIDIA. But the 5080, this is a pretty respectable score here. So there you go, more or less things were confirmed. I know on the 5080 launch, there were a lot of people that were expecting the 5080 to handily pull ahead of the 4090. And based on stuff that NVIDIA said. And that can be true if multi-frame generation enters the picture, because you could get 3 or 4, frame gen cycles between your actual real frames. The bottom line with that, though, is that if you don't already have a reasonably okay gameplay experience, it's not going to make your gameplay experience dramatically better. If you're only getting 10 FPS, frame generation is not going to make you have a smooth, playable, awesome 40 FPS experience or 50 or whatever. I'm surprised that Monster Hunter Wilds is okay with 30 FPS. That's like a console thing, right? I can like 45 FPS with FreeSync, G-Sync is okay maybe sometimes, but I don't know. Multi-frame gen, from my experience in Cyberpunk, when I'm doing 60 FPS plus as like my base frame rate, it really is something special. So I kind of get why NVIDIA does that, but there are a lot of gamers that are, of the opinion that no, multi-frame gen is really a smoothing technology. It's not something I want to see used in competitive gaming or anything like that, but NVIDIA really has done a good job trying to minimize the latency overhead of multi-frame gen. Like going from multi-frame gen from 1 frame to 2 or 3 frames doesn't dramatically increase the latency of delivering the real frames to you as they come through. But it is interesting. The other side effect of multi-frame gen is in a small form factor machine like this, if you are targeting a frame rate like 120 FPS, the GPU can use less power overall. So like if without multi-frame gen, you could only achieve say 90 or 110 FPS, the way that the software is architected, at least right now, is that I'm going to target 120 FPS, or I'm going to try to do VSync with this. You're going to get multi-frame gen, and the card's going to physically produce less frames. Some people may argue that no, the card should produce as many real frames as possible and then generate. But from a frame pacing standpoint, it's very difficult to do that. So I get why NVIDIA has opted to go this way. So if you're running on a setup like this and you're targeting 120 FPS and your native performance is say 90, the card will use less power because it's only rendering something on the order of 60 or 65 FPS instead of 90. I mean, it's delivering 120 FPS to the monitor as a smoothing technology, but only about half of those frames were real. So interesting stuff. In terms of other noteworthy features of the ASUS Prime RTX 5080, ASUS advises that they are using the phase change thermal paste material. I'm not 100% sure if that is the PTM 7950 or not. This is another phase change technology, but it's interesting to see that this GPU ships with it. And this GPU posts some of the best thermal scores of any of the RTX GPUs that we've looked at so far. The fit and finish of this design, it's clear that ASUS dumped a lot of their R&D points in the overall design of the card. It's not just an aesthetic choice, it's also cooling, heatsink, and everything else. They were able to dump more engineering into this cooling solution because this cooling solution is going to benefit basically every GPU they make in the Prime series, even non-NVIDIA GPUs. And I like that kind of product engineering. It's not just we're going to put a bunch of engineering into this one card and then we're doing a clean sheet design for the next card and the next card after that and the next card after that. Clearly, ASUS was trying to optimize for performance versus cost so as not to make this card overly expensive versus the Founders Edition counterparts. But ASUS has delivered a card that is very, very effective in terms of its cooling solution and thermals and also noise. And in some ways is superior to the Founders Edition when deployed in edge case scenarios like, well, our Era 2 here or other small form factor machines where a double flow through design maybe is not going to work great for the 5080 or the 5090 Founders Edition version of those cards. So overall, interesting engineering choices from ASUS. Really, the only downside that I can come up with is that the NVIDIA drivers have been a little less than stable the last couple of weeks. And I waited until the latest driver release to see that, oh yeah, NVIDIA has actually fixed some of these issues in the very latest version. So if you were having some of those issues, be sure to go update your driver version. But overall, not too bad. It's been a quick look at the ASUS GeForce RTX 5080. If I missed anything or you want to see something tested specifically or whatever, hit me up in the forum. I'm signing out, and I'll see you there.